Allora, noi tutti dipendiamo dai servizi ecosistemici, come sappiamo, e li stiamo fortemente stressando, e quindi l'imperativo di rigenerarli è tanto più grande, sono in proporzione, e per fortuna siamo nel posto giusto per parlare di questo, e il prossimo panel metterà a confronto il locale e il globale, e comunque la consapevolezza che la cultura estrattiva ha un impatto molto negativo su tanti popoli che vivono laddove appunto noi siamo intensamente attivi su questo. Quindi per questo panel rinvito, e l'abbiamo già avuta ieri come relatrice, Sylvie Goulard, che è copresidente di IAPB, e ci parlerà di crediti di biodiversità, Jacopo Orlando, che è Impact and Sustainability Manager in Aboca. Buongiorno Jacopo, è agronomo, ha un dottorato in economia, ha lavorato al Ministero per la PAC. E poi da remoto abbiamo Sboniso Phakathi, che è responsabile delle iniziative sociali di conservazione di un'organizzazione che si chiama RISE e che facilita il coinvolgimento delle comunità locali presso il South African Wildlife College, e lui crede fermamente che l'amore è comunque il motore che porta insieme le persone e dunque accelera l'impatto delle nostre scelte. Modera e analizza Francesca Cesari, caporedattrice della sezione di biologia clinica, scienze sociali della rivista Nature, ed è anche sostenuta da una nutritissima carriera accademica. A voi.
Se funziona il microfono. Buongiorno a tutti I panelisti. This session will be in English. I'm really privileged to be here. We know that we are living in a space of biodiversity loss. Scientific discoveries are showing how this is impact every aspect of our life. But we are also living in an opportunity of doing something to regenerate as at the core of a different set of things. So I would like to start with Sylvie, if that's okay. Sylvie, when we had our last conversation, it really struck with me the fact that you mentioned that we cannot continue to have a policy of extractions and from nature. So why do you think it is important to include the value of nature within policies and actions?
So thank you so much for inviting me. Today you will have my mistakes in English instead of having my mistakes in Italian. But I left the slides at home. I had prepared slides and I thought, no, it's not a good message. So why should we try to give nature a value? Let's look at one of the beautiful trees in the Parco Sempione. If you keep the trees, if you keep the shadow of the tree, if you keep the house for the birds, if you keep the pleasure for all of us, you are not remunerated. If you cut the tree, you have the wood, you can sell the wood, and in some parts, I hope not in the Parco Sempione, but in many parts of the world you could even get money for planting new trees because they are reforestations. So the idea is, why shouldn't we give a natural thing that gives us so much a value as such? A value for life and not a value for dead things. In French, for the paintings, we say les natures mortes. And so nature should have more value when it is alive and kept alive by people making efforts. And as I said yesterday, until now we teach in universities and everywhere that to run a company you only need capital, money, and workforce. Actually, we all use also natural capital. So you see the magnitude of the change is to put again at the center of our reasoning something that is there, the water we drink, all the materials we use, and give them some value. And the story of my panel, it's a long story, but it's a collective work. I was thinking where Sandro was saying, you cannot deal with such an issue alone. So it was a Franco-British initiative, but it was global with people representing indigenous people in the panel. We did not consult them, they were in the panel. People from finance, large financial institutions, corporate, the WEF, the Davos group of companies, but also NGOs, scientists, etc. And we try to define together a framework to give nature a value. Of course, it's quite tricky because we have never done it, and the problem is that we are in a phase where, to be honest, we don't know exactly which is the best way to do it. What we want first is to measure in a rigorous way, to measure biodiversity gain, for example, and that must be additional to what would have happened without action. So I simplify, but the idea is how can we make sure that we measure properly a unit of improvement? And then we will see what we do. Some people want to do a real market where you exchange the units, but we are very careful. We want high integrity approach. We don't want to have people, you know, exchanges monkeys in Indonesia with a coral reef elsewhere, or wolves in Russia with savanna trees. So we stated that biodiversity is always local. It is always local, and thanks many scientists. So this is the first thing, be local, make sure that the people on the ground are involved and get the money, if at the end they are the stewards of nature, which is not an easy stuff. In many countries you don't have cadastres, etc. And I stop on the idea that we will see if we trade these units at a certain moment in a framework, or if we put nature at on the balance sheets of companies, or if we use these credits for infrastructure financing. We consider nature as an infrastructure, and the development banks use the units, etc. But we are at the beginning of the journey, but very determined to continue. I stop here. I could talk for hours. And to answer Sandro, this made me happy. To work worldwide, and realizing that, and we have someone from Africa with us, it's very important. Don't listen to the Donald only. There are many more interesting people on Earth, above all in the South. Thank you.
And this is extremely true, of course. And so you mentioned how this all starts also at the focus of the local. So if I think about Jacopo, you know, the Aboca and the sustainability, and you said some time ago that in order to be sustainable as a business, there needs to be a focus on nature and restoration as well. So what is your point of view from the point of view of someone who deals with it at a daily basis, from the company especially?
Okay, thank you. It's a pleasure for me to be here. And I think that it's very interesting what Sylvie explained us and what we do. From 1978, the year when Aboca was founded, we look in the nature solutions for human health. So what does it mean? It means that for us, biodiversity is not an optional, because without the ecosystem services that Sylvie mentioned, we are not able to find the raw materials, medicinal plants, to have the medicinal plants that we cultivate organically. And so for us, the attention to biodiversity is not something like a project of CSR, but it means have the possibility to have a resilient business. Without ecosystem services, we are not able to do what we do. For this reason, we started with some activities related to understand which is our impact on biodiversity. And this year we published this biodiversity strategy with the aim to put all together all the action that we do in terms of agricultural activities, research, culture, and so on, and started to have a very complex indexes in order to improve year after year our impact on biodiversity. And but I think that we have a problem, not we as a company, but we people involved in the approach to regenerate. Because if we don't change how we measure value, we block the real transformation, I think. As a company, we believe that only those businesses that are focused on economic growth, social justice, and respect for nature will be able to be resilient and so to stay in the market in the future. And this is why we decided to become a benefit corporation, also putting inside to our statute the attention on biodiversity. But the context is something that is different. So I have an example. People say that organic agriculture is too expensive. But the problem is that conventional farming hides those costs that are not considered in price, but impact on the health of the nature, on the health of people. So we have a context where price does not reflect positive externalities, the trees on Sempione, and the negative externalities. So I think that we have to stress on this aspect, because if we are not able to change the overall count of costs and benefits, we will be not able to have a real transformation of the society, a real approach to regenerative society. We can do something, but we cannot do a real transformation. We can do something like company, you can do something like scientist, but the society is something that is more complex, and we have to go to the core, to the center of how the society works.
And this is very true, and it's bringing back what Sylvie was saying about also the importance of including, people from every side of the project. And I'm thinking about Sboniso, who joined us thankfully from South Africa, and it's a wealth of knowledge of how to do that, in a practical sense. Do you want to tell us more about what is happening at the Wellcome Wildlife College? In your experience, and in particular on the need to regenerate people before you regenerate nature.
Indeed. Good morning, Francesca, and good morning to the participants of this lovely gathering. It's really an honor to be here. My name is Sboniso Phakathi from the Southern African Wildlife College, and we're based in the Kruger National Park, the world-renowned Kruger National Park. And when we really look at conservation externally, we paint a really beautiful picture, of biodiversity protection, of increasing wildlife populations, increasing wildlife areas. And sometimes we forget people are central to all of our work. And so this is really the work of our unit, which is the Rural Initiatives for Sustainable Environment. Our work is on the social dimensions of conservation. That is the people side of things. And I'll really start by saying that we are nature. We're the illusion of being separate from nature is what enables us to continue perpetuating all of these harms on nature and these harms on ourselves. So if our intention is to rewild, to restore and to regenerate nature, the human has to do the same thing. The human has to do the same thing. We have to see ourselves as part of nature. So really our work starts there. You might know the history of conservation in sub-Saharan Africa around exclusion, elite capture, and really protecting nature from people for really exclusive access to those kind of areas. So our work at this point in time, and for the past, at least for the past 20 years as the Southern African Wildlife College, has really been focused on this, is how do we restore dignity of people? How do we restore respect of people, in our context, African people? And how do we get people connected to wildlife, conserved areas and protected areas in a way that is dignified, in a way that is respectable? Sylvie spoke about the importance of natural capital in the process of regeneration. I'd like to add one more, and that is social capital. It really is such an incredibly important lever or point of leverage to help us to accelerate our regenerative efforts. When humans feel rooted in the place that they exist in, when they are able to live a life of purpose, and the barriers to access that life of purpose are reduced, we allow people to thrive. We allow societies to thrive, to have more connected relationships where, on an express level, there'll be things like stronger governance, better relationship with natural systems or the ecosystems or the life supporting systems. And we start seeing areas improving. There are multiple success stories in the sub-Saharan region and the world at large, but that's really my point, is to just say that we are nature and we need to start by regenerating ourselves. Thank you, Francesca. Over to you.
Thank you. So I would like to give opportunity to people to ask questions as well, because you might have a lot of, and it's a great opportunity to have Sylvie, Jacopo, and Sboniso here. Is there any key question that you would like to ask before we continue? Anyone? Yes. So, and then we have a question. Yeah. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Jacopo, you've got a lot of experience on connecting what you do with competitiveness. Could you please share with us a little bit how you improve your commercial competitiveness by doing the kind of business as Aboca does?
Yeah, okay. So, I can tell you a short story. Before we became Benefit Corporation, during our meeting with our sellers, the property of Aboca always explained that the approach of the company has to create value in order to be able to gain profit, against the overall approach of make profit in order to have economic value creation. What does it mean? That if you want to have a business that has to be resilient in the long term, the approach to get the money and go away is not successful. It could be successful in the short term, but not in the long term. So what we do is find in all the sector of our business a way in order to create value for all the people involved. And I mean that the great opportunity to become a benefit corporation is that you put in your statute this aspect and you change your mindset, understanding that it's not only what you do, but it's also the way in which you do your business that it's very important. And you need to have a double approach, considering in the same time the impact in terms of money and the impact in terms of nature, relationship, and so on. But I think that the most important thing is that you have to look to sustainability. We listened before that we have to look like an investment. I think something more. It's not only an investment, it's not only a cost, it's an approach, it's a way to characterize your business, and it's a strategic tool in order to enhance your profitability. I can say the last thing, that we also operate in the pharmacy sector, and when we approach a new pharmacy, when we buy a new pharmacy, we always find that in the previous management, they look to have the very short time for the single client in order to have the maximization of profit and the minimum amount of costs. What we do exactly the opposite. We focus on the time. We have to spend more time for the single customer, and at the end, you will, for sure, you have more costs, but people can recognize your professionality, people can recognize your approach, and so you have fidelity, and you have, in the long term, maximization also of your profits.
Thank you. So I would like, in the interest of time, to ask our panelists. There was a question down there? So yes, please. you know.
Thanks so much. I think a question for the three of you, if we have time, otherwise anyone wants to pick it. Looking in the future, in the next, let's say, 5 years, you know, horizon that we were discussing also yesterday, what do you think, for example, companies, academia, science in general, and civil society organizations can do to bring our measurement, for example, of social capital and natural capital from the project level to a local ecosystem level from your perspective? Thank you.
Sylvie, do you want to start?
Yes, very briefly, what Enrico Giovannini said before is very important. We should not go backward, as some politicians pretend, and unfortunately the EU level did. We need data. It's very strange that we are in a time where everyone is talking about AI, but when it is about greening, they say we could live without data. Okay, they should not be too complex, we can always improve the standards. We need data. We need to be sure that everything is evidence-based. You come from...
I totally agree. Couldn't agree more.
So first of all, we need data, but it is not enough. As it was said, people should be also at the center. The knowledge of indigenous people, for example, one of us told us in our panel, you came to our country to give a Latin name to the plants we know better than you do. So it's typically the kind of things we should avoid. So mix the knowledge, rely on data, choose as consumers, boycott the ones who are not doing anything. Well, we should be tougher. I mean, the other side of the debate is always very tough and spreading just lies. So use your power as a citizen, as a consumer, reduce also a little bit your consumption and you will be happier.
Sboniso, do you want to answer the question as well?
At the risk of repetition, I think Sylvie has really hit it on the head, or hit it on the nail. And that is definitely creating these explicit connections between human well-being and ecosystem health. I think those two things are important in real context. Sort of community-based or community-level monitoring and evaluation is incredibly important. I think the use of citizen science in this regard can be incredibly valuable. Most of our work, unfortunately, not as the Wildlife College, but some of the practitioners sometimes in this area and people coming in from external areas, very extractive research, you know. So the people who are managing resources battle to have that the evidence base or the science base to be able to improve their practices. So yeah, I think community level monitoring, community level evaluations, and you know, then feeding up through the levels. There are programs that are currently in place, like the CBNRM, Community-Based Natural Resources Management Program, such as in Zimbabwe and Namibia. These programs really are able to connect grassroots level data collection all the way through to our decision makers and our policy makers. Sometimes those programs are open to corruption, of course, but at least that data and that information filters all the way up.
Thank you. We have one last question here at the front. If it's
basically not a question, but food for thoughts. Because when you talk about valuation, it's about finance, and you know where you value most widespread is corporations. So if you do an evaluation of a corporation, you find out if you account the asset and liability is only a very, very minor part of the valuation. Most of the valuation is intangible. So maybe this could be an approach for valuing ecosystems as well. Basically, the intangible doesn't mean that it has, it's ethereal. It generates future cash flows. And this is the job of the evaluator, to have an educated guess of which cash flow could ecosystems generate for the future. I give you an example. Agriculture is in trouble for productivity, resilience, climate change, profitability, etc. One of the ways to revitalize agriculture is regenerative agriculture, which has clearly benefits from neighboring natural ecosystems. The FAO presented a very nice presentation in Belém about the impact, value of positive value of ecosystem service in agriculture. This is a typical example of intangible value. you would eventually spend some money for the natural ecosystem, which eventually doesn't return feedback, positive, let's say, cash flow from the extraction of water, wood, or whatsoever, but you would have a spillover effect of more resilience and productivity in the cultivated land. This is just an example. You can have another example in towns for health. It is clearly with the One Health principle that you have a health benefit. So if I have develop an industrial area or an urban one, what about having parks and then having maybe a tax exemption, because these parks we know will have a positive effects on human health. This is possibly a way of thinking about this challenge that you have, Sylvie, and all the rest of the community. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So in the interest of time, so we heard about, of course, the importance of people, the importance of global activities. We heard about how we can make a difference in the way we think about sustainability, also through the comments. We talked about the fact that people matter, they are part of nature, we are all nature, and how to move on. If I could ask just one sentence last, how do you see the regenerative society of the future? So, Jacopo?
Yeah, again, I think that we have to change how we measure value. And it's an option to work on intangible assets, but I think that we have also to consider how to put inside to our economic sheet the value of ecosystem services. As a company, we are very proud of our biodiversity strategy. This strategy was evaluated and validated by the National Biodiversity Future Center. Okay, but it's not enough. We have to go to the root.
Thank you. Sboniso?
You know, with the current growth projections of Africa, economically and population-wise, I think on the continent there will be some challenges of catching up with sort of the West's development model and Africa developing their own. So nature will have a price to pay, unfortunately. However, I think with all the initiatives that are taking place, these concerted efforts around holistic practices and the thinking that's really been brought into practices, I see that this, at least my message, my parting message would be for us to be better ancestors, you know, to start planting trees that we might not enjoy the shade thereof, but being better ancestors.
Thank you. And Sylvie?
Now, briefly, something that some people don't like, but I say it the same. I mean, if you want to think long-term, think that each of us, we are not here forever. And the first regeneration is the regeneration of our bodies, of our lives. So try to build something that goes beyond your own very short life and do it for the others. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask everyone to thank the panelists and thank you, Sboniso, for joining. And I'm sure there will be more questions that we can answer afterwards.
Thank you.